G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Unfortunately today we're not in some amazing scenic place around Australia. We're actually in our front yard on our driveway actually. We've snuck home for a couple of weeks just to get a little bit of warranty work done on the van and a few things done to the car, and it's been good actually to get home and have a long shower and see the kids and the animals and those sorts of things. So today's video is actually one where I'm coming back to one I made about 6 months ago, one of the first videos that we made, where I ran through Barry the BT and all of the mods that we'd done to set him up for our touring adventures. So I thought it'd be really important to come back after 6 months time and actually give an updated run through of not only the car, but talk about the things that I either wish we had have done or we have done and would do differently. Talk about the 3 things I think that we've done really well and would really do again, and just do a quick run through on all the mods that I've done to the BT and talk you through whether I think they're absolutely essential, whether they're a nice to have, or whether they were a waste of time. Luckily there weren't too many wastes of time, but let's start with the things that I wish I either had have done or I wish I had have done differently. So let's get into that. Alright, so I've made my way around to the back of the car here, and old Mavo will love when I talk about this because she was campaigning the whole time before we left that I should have done this. But one of the biggest fails that we made before, that I made while I was setting up the car before we left, is that I thought that it was no use to get a canopy on the back of the BT. So just for a bit of context, I bought this car as a demonstrator and it had a few bells and whistles on it before we picked it up. So it had the sports bar, it had the standard Mazda tonneau cover, which is a pain in the ass. But let's have a look why. Now, it's all been cleaned up and it's all been repacked because we're heading to the Cape tomorrow. But this tub area, when we got back from 6 months in WA, or doing 6 months of doing a lap, was 3/4 full of the Pilbara and the Kimberley dust. The fridge slide that we had here was absolutely destroyed, and yeah, I just should have put a canopy on. So Mavo's standing here smiling with this Cheshire cat grin on her face. But yeah, what we're going to do is actually order an RSI canopy, smart cap canopy. I don't know whether anybody's seen them, but they're a great piece of kit. Now, the back of the car as well, we had a rough country fridge slide and it was absolutely decimated on the trip. 1, filled up with dust, and 2, just rattled apart. It's rough country is Autobahn's generic brand. It was a cheap piece of kit, and unfortunately it acted like a cheap piece of kit. So what I've done, a shout out to the guys at Dun & Watson, which is a small engineering mob in Tingalpa in Brisbane, or Wynnum West in Brisbane, and got a really good quality fridge slide. What I love about this Dun & Watson product is that it's super heavy duty. I could just feel the difference in the quality of this particular fridge slide, and I got to feel it a lot because you have to put them together when you buy them. But this is just significantly better quality than the rough country slide. I think its actual weight that it holds is something like 230 kilos. Don't quote me on that, but it is a great piece of kit. At $400 on the nose for a large fridge slide, I think this is the 80 litre and above slide, is significantly cheaper than the MSA or the ARB, which were the ones that I was going to go. They always say that the cheapest way around is usually to go the most expensive way the first time, but I'm really confident that this is going to go well. So let's see how it handles the Cape. As I said, I would love to have a canopy on here right now. RSI has about a 3-month waiting time, so we're not going to get it on before we go to the Cape. So it'll be interesting to see how this Dun & Watson slide goes, but just feeling the quality, I think she's going to go really well. Alright, so let's go and have a look at the next thing that I wish I had done a little bit differently. Well, we're going to walk to the front of the car. So you'll notice straight away when you look at the front of the car here that I've got brand new tyres on here. Now, our trip was about 30,000 Ks, and the tyres that were on there before were monster all-terrainers, and they were on the car for about 38,000 Ks. and they were absolutely decimated by the time that we got home. They were looking dodgy in Darwin. By the time we got through the interior and back out to Brisbane, they were on the wear indicators, in particular the front left, or the passenger side front tyre. So I knew, one, that I needed to do something about the upper control arms, and two, probably have a look at the suspension setup and also change the tyres. And I would rate those monster tyres probably 2 stars out of 5. They were, from a performance perspective, on hill climbs, on the beach, were pretty good, but they were really, really loud on the road. Like, I'm talking really loud on the road, louder than the whistle from the roof rack. And just the wear on those tyres were nowhere near what I would expect it to be. Even though we put them through their paces 100 times over, would have expected to get more than 35 to 38,000 Ks out of them. So I've gone for a set of Fork and Wild Peaks. I've also just raised the profile of the tyre. So I did have a 285/60 on an 18-inch rim. I've gone for a 285/65, which gets me much closer to that true 33-inch tyre. But let's have a look at the suspension mods, because the tyres and the suspension are an absolute essential when you're touring around the country and doing a lot of the rough roads that we've done. But I would do things significantly differently. One, making sure you get the best quality tyres on the market, and Fork and Wild Peaks, from the research that I've done, are about the best. And also, I'll just quickly show you what I've done with the suspension here. So we've got Black Hawk upper control arms. Now, when we left for our trip, there were only one set of upper control arms for this BT available. So the upper control arms have significantly improved the wheel alignment or the ability to wheel align the tyres. And I've also ditched the Fulcrum Formula twin tube shocks and gone for a monotube shock, 3-inch with a drop diff as well. So the front end of the car is now set up completely differently. I'm hoping that makes a significant difference. You can already feel it in the steering. Old Mavo jumped in the car, I think when we're on our way back between Darwin and Brisbane somewhere, and said, "Ant, this just doesn't feel right." And she was right, but because I've been driving it the entire time, I didn't notice it as drastically. So I'm not saying don't do your suspension, that's because it's an absolute essential when you go on the road. But in my top 3 things that I'd do differently, I wouldn't be going for that Fulcrum Formula kit. The other thing that happened, I probably talked about it on another video, is that we tore an airbag not that far into the trip. So when we got to Perth, I was getting some other work done. I was getting a transcooler put in by the guys at Reaper Performance Diesel in Perth, and they were amazing. And I noticed that the wheel alignment was out, and it just wasn't driving very well. And there was a big tear in the airbag, in the Polyair airbag on the rear passenger side. So we had to get those airbags replaced. I'll quickly show you what we've done with the airbags as well. Just to get a bit more space, we've actually fabbed up a custom spacer to sit those airbags in, give them a little bit more height and not make them extend as much. I find I only need to run about 25 PSI when I'm putting the van on, and that is working really well. So overall, Polyair airbags tore. The Fulcrum Formula kit, I just didn't think was up to scratch with what we did. You know, the Gibb River Road, Kalumburu Road, Ningaloo Road, Bungle Bungles and those sorts of things. I just don't think it was suitable for what we did. It was at a really good price point, but I just don't think the kit was good enough. So I'm hoping that this West Coast setup, we've got West Coast airbags in the back. We still are running the Formula rear end, but I'm hoping that goes so much better. So the last thing in my list of things that we either wouldn't do or we'd do significantly differently, and this is one that we wouldn't do. I don't think we'd do. What about you?
No.
No? So, can't really see it from this side. But we installed a Blackview 4K dash cam. Now, there were 2 reasons we installed that. Number one was that obviously if we had an accident, which we didn't have while we were on tour, and we weren't at fault, you want some sort of evidence to suggest that it wasn't your fault. And maybe if that had happened to us, I mightn't be so critical on this this piece of modification. However, we also got that 4K black view because we thought we might be able to get some Instagram footage, some YouTube footage for you guys through the 4K camera. And to be really honest, not so bad with the quality of the camera, but the app that you use for black view is absolutely atrocious. And the camera did play up with the Wi-Fi set up from the car head unit and those sorts of things. So, you know, for the cost of that and then the buggering around getting it installed, I just wouldn't do it again. Maybe you go a cheap, and there's heaps cheaper dash cams on the market, maybe we'd do that. But we really have not got any value, probably would not use that or do that again. All right, so onto the things that we actually were so glad that we did, and things that we think are absolute essentials for your touring setup. Funnily enough, aren't some of the most expensive mods that I've done on the car either. So the first one, and this is in no particular order, guys, but I was standing here, so it's probably easy to start here. Invest in a tyre pressure monitoring system. This cost me about $310 with a discount code, and I've got to say, every single day that we're on the road, we use this particular piece of kit. Obviously, for those who are familiar with it, it's pretty straightforward, but you get this as the in-car unit, which reads all of your tyre pressures for not only the car and your spare, but also the caravan and its spare. But it also gives you an alert in the car, and we did have a couple of situations where we did get alerts to make sure that there's something going on with our tyre pressures, and you actually jump on the issue before you lose a tyre, before you lose a rim, before you have a catastrophic blowout. The system works really well. I've actually stopped even using the special dust caps and locking nut that comes on there, because as you would have seen from a lot of our videos, we've done quite a few bit of beach work, corrugations, river crossings and those sorts of things. So we're constantly in and out of the car, putting our tyre pressures up and down. So I don't even bother with the special locking cap. But anyway, that is an amazing piece of kit. The other beautiful thing is, I'll put a link in the description and we'll put our product code up on the screen here. We've actually partnered with iCheck TPMS, and you can get a 10% discount simply by in the checkout using the code ENA10 or Empty Nested Adventures 10, and you'll get 10% off this product. I cannot, and I know that they're supporting our channel, but I've got to say, knowing that our tyres are good when you're running 600 k's up the Gibb River Road, or you know, on the Caravan Killer on Ningaloo Road and those sorts of things, knowing where your tyre pressures are at is one, great peace of mind, and two, just a really, really smart thing to do. So if you haven't already, invest in a tyre pressure monitoring system. Okay, so number two, and this is one we actually did whilst we were on the road. We invested in an ARB Frontier long range fuel tank. Now this did initially cause us a bit of heartache when we were on the road, because when we were at El Questro and we were staying in the swag, I jumped down to pick up the swag one day and I could smell diesel. And as it turns out, we had a manufacturing fault. I'll put a couple of photos of how we fixed it in the description. Luckily, we were able to fix it and we had enough stuff in our spares to be able to do that. But it was a bit nerve-wracking being in the middle of the Gibb River Road and having a leaking fuel tank. However, what I will say is that as soon as I notified ARB in Darwin, they put a tank aside, which they had in stock for me, told me to ring them 2 days out for us getting there. They swapped it out the day that we needed it swapped out and had it all fixed up for us. So whilst it was a bit of heartache and a bit of a stressful thing to happen to you, the way that they dealt with it was absolutely amazing. And they had ARB and Frontier on the phone, making sure that it wasn't I guess one of those manufacturing faults that impact an entire batch and those sorts of things. So they were really professional with the way they dealt with it. The beautiful thing about doing the long range tank though, is even though we probably didn't have to have it, obviously carry jerry cans and those sorts of things, it just gives you that peace of mind that I've got about 900 k's of range in the car with the van on at the worst. And even if you see a fuel station where it's 30 cents higher than I think it should be, you can keep pumping on to the next fuel station that comes along where you know it's going to be cheaper. So the long range fuel tank, if you're doing a lot of touring like we are, is an absolute must. and I'm really glad that we did it. It's one of those things that we adapted on the fly. We got to Port Lincoln just before we went across the Nullarbor and thought we really need to do this. So away we went and put that long range fuel tank in the car. So that's 2 of our top 3 of things that we're really glad we did. The last one, you're not going to be able to see it without pulling the front end apart. But I did, the reason that I was at Reaper Performance Diesel when we discovered the airbags were shot was that I put a transmission cooler in, a PSR transmission cooler into the car. Now, I'm not running a scan gauge, so I can't tell you exactly what the ups and downs and how much reduction in temperature and those sorts of things it did. All I know is that we did 30,000 Ks in 6 months in some of the most hardcore conditions on the roads, and we had absolutely no issues with our transmission heating up and those sorts of things. So I can't give you all the stats, but I'm bloody glad that we did it, because doing a transmission when you're in the middle of nowhere is, one, a really massive risky thing if you're stuck on the side of the road, and 2, a really, really expensive job to get done by Backyard Bob when you rock up to the next town that you arrive at. So not that all mechanics in small towns are Backyard Bobs, but I'm really glad that we did the trans cooler. So they're our 3 things that we wish we had done or done differently, and our top 3 things that we think were the best things that we did. Now let's take a run through the rest of the car and we'll wrap it up there. So let's run through the rest of the mods that we've done, and I'll just give you the thoughts around whether we think it's an essential, a nice to have, or won't do it again. So we'll start at the front of the car. The off-road animal predator bull bar, and I'll sort of package this together with the custom off-road stainless steel bash plates. We didn't really test these out significantly. We didn't hit a cow or a big red kangaroo or anything like that, but we did hit some smaller animals. I don't think anybody that's travelled around Australia has not hit an animal before, but I would highly, highly recommend making sure that you've got a bull bar. I think it's absolutely essential, and to be honest, the bash plates as well. When I put these bash plates on and had a look at the factory Mazda, they weren't really bash plates, they were more like plastic guards. They were absolutely useless, even if we ran over a small kangaroo or something like that, compared to what these 4mm and 3mm thick bash plates would do, significantly different. So I would say that it's an absolute essential. Just while we're on the bull bar, something that we picked up a lot of is if you're doing heavy corrugations, I would go for light bars instead of the big round traditional spotlights, because I don't know how many spotlights we saw snapped off their mounts when we were driving along the Gibb River Road, but we didn't see one light bar, and we didn't have any issues with our light bars, obviously. So I know they probably don't look as cool as the big round spotties and those sorts of things, but when you think about the load that runs through these bull bars, I would certainly not be running anything other than light bars. Talking about loads going through bull bars, you'll see that the old UHF aerial is held on with gaffer tape, and unfortunately I had to tighten it up so many times, and probably over tightened it, that the actual mount on the other side where the aerial is completely chewed out. So what I am going to do to remediate this is get a mount that goes in behind on the bonnet hinge. Unfortunately, they weren't in stock, so we're going to have to run the cape with a gaffer taped up UHF aerial. But to be really honest, guys, again, another absolutely essential piece of kit. Hey Mavo, I don't know how many road trains and massive trucks and even other caravans that we went past or needed to go past us, and having a UHF when you're travelling out west is absolutely essential. Some of the road trains we saw are up to 52 metres long, and it's so much easier to radio through to the road train driver just to make sure it's safe to make an overtaking manoeuvre. And you don't have, well, I reckon we went about 2,000 Ks at one stage and saw one overtaking lane, so you have to overtake on the wrong side of the road. So UHFs, you've got to have them, and you'd be crazy if you don't. Last thing at the front here, the old Runva winch. Luckily we didn't need to use it, so again, it's better to have a winch and not use it than it is to need one and not have it. The only thing about the Runva design, this bracket that holds that holds the winch motor in there did rattle off. I lost a screw out of it and did come a bit of a pain in the butt, to be honest. I had to find a stick in the bush, wrap it up and race tape it together just to stop it from falling apart. But other than that design flaw, it's a really, really good piece of kit. Before we leave tomorrow, I need to put a rubber stopper in there to stop the bounce when it's going through the corrugation. All right, guys, so other bits and pieces. This factory BT50 snorkel was on the car. I was going to go and get a cool Steno one, but then I did a bit of research on Stenos and they look more like drinking straws than proper snorkels. This was really serviceable. We did lots of river crossings. I think the deepest was about 1 metre and didn't have any issues with those. So thanks to the old snorkel on the BT, it's not the sexiest piece of kit, but it's practical. Didn't use a snorkel sock either. I prefer to travel with additional spare air filters. And the airbox did an amazing job. Did change obviously the filter after the gib, looked perfectly clean on top, but holy crap, when I looked at the bottom of it was disgusting. Essential, absolutely essential when you're touring. Gen 2 clear view compact mirrors. These have been amazing. I don't know how many cars towing we saw on the highways without tow mirrors, and I think that's absolutely crazy. These have been amazing. Our van's not that wide. These come out heaps further than where I've got them set for our particular tow setup. But again, I know clear views are a bit expensive. There's other ones on the market that probably are a little bit uglier, but they do the job. So make sure you invest in a set of tow mirrors when you're traveling around the country. The Rhino Rack. I think I explained it in the last video. I don't have the backbone system because it hadn't been launched for the BT50 when I actually put the rack on, but it was really serviceable. We didn't need to carry too much gear on the roof, thankfully. Max tracks are up there. It's always handy when you need your max tracks, and your shovel's right there. I think I've locked it. Yeah, I've locked it so no one can pinch my shovel. But the shovel came out a few times. The max tracks actually only came out once for me, come out a few times to help other people out. But it's really handy just to have your kit locked up there. It does make noise, let's be honest, guys. You do hear a bit of wind noise when you've got this, particularly over 80 k's an hour or in strong headwinds, but I wouldn't be without that, and there's so much more room for us to carry stuff if I needed it. So thumbs up to the Rhino Rack. I think it's a nice to have. It's not essential, but for us it was pretty essential. All right, so just a couple of things in the car. I've already talked through the UHF, so I won't talk about that anymore, but the Razorback seat covers, we invested in these. Not the cheapest on the market, but not the most expensive either. We got them at 15% off, so keep an eye out for those sales. These aren't the premium, these are just the standard neoprenes, but to be honest, guys, given the amount of sand, amount of snorkeling and jumping in after being in the water and those sorts of things, they were an absolutely amazing investment. So the Razorback seat covers, massive thumbs up. It'd be really cool if they wanted to jump on and support the channel as well. But yeah, I strongly recommend at least a good set of seat covers. I took them off the other day just to vacuum the car, and the seats looked absolutely brand new. I probably should have taken a photo when I did that, but anyway. And the last thing in here, really quickly, the ECU Shop Ultra Boost 2 tune. Now, to give you some numbers, over the 30,000 Ks that we did on the trip, we averaged about 14.2 litres to the 100. To give you some context in this car, when it's fully when the van is unloaded, but when the car is loaded, we average around 10.5 litres to the 100. So given that it's a dual tune, one for ultimate power, and to be really honest, you don't want to drive these things as a race car. Well, I don't anyway. So I use it on tune number 2, which is the tow tune setup. Nice power down low, detunes the engine up high so that when we're in 4th, 5th and 6th we use a lot less fuel. The worst day with the strongest headwinds that we had on trip, our fuel consumption came in at about 17.8 litres per 100. When you're towing 2.8 tonnes, I think 17.8 litres per 100 is absolutely awesome. So again, the Ultra Boost 2 tune is not an absolute essential. You don't have to have that done to your car before you tour, but in terms of fuel consumption, in terms of low down power when you really need it, and just in terms of the world we live in where fuel averaged on our trip about $2.40 per litre, saving a few litres per 100 due to this tune probably paid for the the tune in the trip that we've done. So I love the Ultra Boost setup. The other thing I love about it is that you can completely unplug it and it doesn't leave a trace on the ECU. So if there was something to go wrong with your engine, Mazda would be none the wiser. So there you have it, guys. I hope that this helped you out with setting your cars up if you're at the stage that I was at about 7 or 8 months ago when I was frantically getting ready for the big trip. As I said, there's lots of things that I think are absolutely essentials. There's a few things that are nice to do's, and there's also a few things that I thought were a bit of a waste of time. The big thing for me though is regardless of what car you buy, you're gonna have to go and spend some money to actually get it ready to do the things that we've done. As I said, we had minimal trouble, just a manufacturing fault with that long range fuel tank, but we didn't lose any tyres with all of the stuff that we've done. And I think a lot of that come down not only to making sure that our tyre pressures are right and those sorts of things, but just what we spent making sure that we had the car set up properly. So any questions, as always, hit us up in the comments. We love when your questions come through. And other than that, safe travels, happy setting up your car, ready for your next trip.